Young Dr. Weinstein is, as is usually the case, a really fabulous Cheers episode. This is the 7th episode of the 5th season, directed by the wonderful James Burrows. And as always, there will be spoilers from now as I talk about the episode. And we have two main parts to the narrative. We have one involving Woody and one with Sam and Diane. And apart from the story with Woody feeling a little incomplete, and I'll talk about that more when we get there, this is a pretty brilliant episode. So as I said, spoilers from now. The opening is actually a little uncomfortable. I didn't really enjoy it because Carla overhears a customer saying they can't read the check that she's just given them, and she assumes that it's because of her handwriting. I kind of feel like it was obvious that it was his eyesight, but obviously I've seen this episode before, so maybe that's not a fair thing to say. And if you've only seen the episode once, I'd love to know, did you think it was his eyesight? Did you assume it was Carla's handwriting? Carla thought it was her handwriting, and she ends up going off about this, and it turns out he just didn't have his glasses in that moment, and he ends up giving her a $10 tip because, fairly, Carla did apologise and just said she'd had a bad day, that's why she snapped at him. She wasn't doing this to manipulate him, but he gave her this $10, and she realised that actually she can do this to other customers, and that's what she does. And I kind of didn't like that part of it. It just made me feel a little bit uncomfortable. But nevertheless, it's still a pretty decent opening. We then get in with the story involving Woody because Cliff comes in, says that he's been a US postal carrier for 7 years, and then they start talking about leaving impressions on the world. Carla has a comment about Norm having already left a pretty big impression, obviously referring to his butt on the stool, and Woody says that he's going to come up with a drink. And he presents this blue concoction that he calls the Blue Boyd of Happiness. And I have to say, it looks pretty eye-catching. And they all try it, it's really good, but then Carla tries it and points out that it's already a drink called Blue Moon. And she, within a couple of seconds, she refers to Woody as both a doorknob and a horseshoe. I've never heard of anybody being called a horseshoe as an insult, and I love it. It's brilliant. Diane then gets a call, and she's very excited because she's eating at the cafe. And Sam responds by saying he's driving home. He's driving home in the car. That itself is very, very funny. But what I particularly love about this moment is Frasier in the background, just behind Sam and Diane, chuckling away to himself at the scene. And I rather enjoyed that. Frasier then explains that actually this is a really exclusive restaurant and only pretentious people can eat there, obviously throwing shade at Diane. And Sam suggests he's going to take his date there, which Diane finds very funny, and there's no way he can get a reservation. He tries because he's Sam Malone. It doesn't work. And Diane leaves, really excited about getting this opportunity. And then Sam does something that I hated. I love Sam. I love him to bits. There's nothing he could do that would make me dislike him. But in that moment, he came close. Because when Diane had gone, he phones the cafe back and cancels her reservation. And I didn't like that at all. Frasier then tries to phone up and get Sam a reservation under the name of Dr. Julian Weinstein, which is allegedly a friend of Frasier's, but really there's not a lot of friendship there. And it doesn't work. Cut to the next scene, we are at the cafe, and I think this was, in my opinion, so unexpected. As I said, I've, of course, seen this episode before, so I could remember it, but I feel like the reveal was so surprising that I don't remember seeing this coming. And this is the fact that Diane and her date are at the cafe, and she finds out the reservation is no longer there. And before she really gets a chance to respond to this, in waltzes Sam with his date and presents himself as Dr. Julian Weinstein. And it's just so fabulous. I don't agree with it. I think it was a terrible decision to make, but it's very, very funny. And for the next few minutes, we have a lot of people in the restaurant recognizing the name Dr. Weinstein, talking to him, trying to get him to engage in conversation. One person had met Dr. Weinstein before, and he comes out and sees Sam, and Sam comes up with this ludicrous scenario for why he no longer looks like Dr. Weinstein, and it's very well done and it's very entertaining. Again, I completely do not agree with Sam's actions, but it is very funny. And then we cut back to Cheers. We cut back to Cheers a few times. I think that's really well done. The pacing of the restaurant scenes versus back at Cheers is really great. I think it's really important that we do keep cutting back to Cheers whenever we have an episode that's utilising a different set. Because Cheers at the end of the day is at the heart of everything. And Woody is trying to make these drinks. He's out of lemons, I believe it was. And Carla suggests calling Sam or Dr. Weinstein to find out where the lemons are. I feel like she should have known where they are. But nevertheless, Sam, back at the restaurant, gets a call. I like that we're tying together Cheers and the cafe. And it's a phone call from Dr. Woody, which I just thought was so brilliant. And Sam responds, and then Diane approaches Dr. Weinstein and tells him that her date is having chest pains. And this I found to be quite interesting because Sam reluctantly leaves the table to go with her, and Diane takes this opportunity to confront him and say, what on earth are you doing? I think she was nowhere near as angry as she should have been. I think she would have realised at this point what Sam had done, and actually she's nowhere near as having this outburst as I would have expected. Maybe it's because she's around people she considers to be her peers. She doesn't want to embarrass herself, but she does try and embarrass Sam. But actually Sam says something that I think was really interesting. He says, and I quote, "You made me feel like a big nobody." And that is such growth for Sam. I feel like Sam back in season 1, maybe season 2, wouldn't have cared if Diane had made him feel inadequate in front of everybody at Cheers. And initially, it seemed like he cancelled her reservation just to show her up. But actually, once he said that, I think it became clear that he cancelled the reservation to get back at her for making him feel really inadequate. And I think that really, well, on the one hand, it shows growth and maturity with Sam. On the other, he did still do something really ridiculous. So he's not a completely changed person, but I think that particular quote was really telling. We then cut back to Woody, and he's made this drink, and it's delightful. It's a hit. Everybody loves it. He can't remember what's in it. And that's the end of the story with Woody, and I just feel like it did feel a little incomplete, and I don't know what else I would have wanted. I don't know what else I would have expected, but I just feel like I was left a little bit hanging. I wanted a little bit more of a conclusion for that part of the episode. But nevertheless, the rest of the episode plays out brilliantly, sweetly, and of course, very entertainingly and very justly as well. Sam is leaving the cafe with his date, and Diane is asleep in the chair. She'd been waiting for somebody else's cancelled reservation. It never happened. Her date had left her by this point, and Sam says, using his power as Dr. Weinstein, to make sure that Diane got something to eat. And because Dr. Weinstein is a name that carries a lot of weight, they honoured that, and Diane went and had something to eat. And Sam comes back in. He put his date in a taxi, came back in, and he spends time with Diane, and they both have quite a pleasant conversation. Diane thanks Sam, which I feel like, yes, Sam did make sure she got to eat at the cafe, but it's his fault that she didn't to begin with. So her gratitude, I feel like, was maybe a little misplaced, but I also feel like by this point, she was probably just exhausted and hungry. She had tried to stuff bread down her face at one point before Sam came in. Clearly, she was just done with the day and wanting to get it over and done with, which is not the experience she wanted to have. But she does get a chance to turn things around in her favour, because she and Sam eat some food, and then at the end of the meal, she pays for her food, no problems whatsoever. Sam realises he has no cash left, so he tries to pay for his meal with his credit card. They won't accept it because it's got Sam's name on it. And he can't pay with a cheque because his chequebook has Sam Malone's name on it, and the jig is up. And it's a very entertaining way to end the episode, because it seemed like things were going really well for Sam, and he wasn't really getting his comeuppance for doing such a horrible thing. And at the end of it all, Diane got to eat at the cafe, and she got to humiliate Sam for doing something horrible to her. So for Diane, all's well that ends well, and for Sam, really he got what he deserved. So a really brilliant episode all around. A couple of moments that were maybe not perfect, that made me a little uncomfortable, but other than that, young Dr. Weinstein was a fabulous episode with some great moments, and of course, one that I really thoroughly enjoyed.